Paths to Contemplation by Yves Raguin, Jesuit. Part 1. Paths. Chapter 3. When you want to pray. Anyone who wants to get close to God must set aside a short time each day to speak to Him alone, a time of intimacy and encounter with the Lord. In the same way, he must occasionally devote a longer period to penetrating more deeply into the discovery of that intimacy which is the expression of the love of God. The actual place is of little importance, provided the soul finds there sufficient peace and silence. It is true that faith can put us into contact with God at any moment of the day or night, but we must sometimes engage ourselves totally in prayer, and that is why we must, from time to time, turn aside from our normal occupations and plunge ourselves into prayer. The place for prayer should be one in which the soul finds itself freest, and in which the imagination and the intellect follow the soul most docilely in its search for God. This could be perhaps in one's home, in a church or chapel. It really doesn't matter, provided that the soul can open itself out to God and gather together its usually wandering faculties. The soul must be there, completely attentive to God, and not have its concentration shattered by noise, feelings, distractions, and silly thoughts. Christ himself used to go aside to some quiet place, among the hills or on the mountainside, bringing his disciples with him. Many people are prejudiced against such retirement from everyday activity and the bustle of daily life. They think that such prayer is not made under real conditions, and that, moreover, one should pray everywhere. It's true that we should pray everywhere, but those who speak like this and act accordingly run the risk of praying nowhere. You must descend deep into yourself and into God in order that he may really show himself to you in all your activities. You must dig deep to find wells that are abundant enough to irrigate your whole existence. The two dimensions, insight into God and self, are always complementary of each other. If all your actions are to become a prayer, you must have your soul in contact with Christ and with all of creation at a very deep level. Now, it seems quite obvious that in the normal conditions of life, this presupposes a momentary turning aside from the stream of human affairs in order to plunge into the deeper current that gives them life. This is a form of prayer that community prayer cannot replace. Our Lord did say that when several people are gathered together in his name, he is in their midst. He himself prayed with his disciples and had them take part in the sacred liturgy of his sacrifice. But he also went aside to pray alone, and he taught his disciples to do the same. The prayer of the Christian community has its full force only in the union between God the church, and the Christians who make up that church. If you forget that, you will fall into a formalism that would bestow on the community as such a sort of sacramental power. Now, just as it is Christ's sacramental and ecclesial presence that gives the community liturgy its depth, so also, due proportion being preserved, it is the depth of the union of souls with the Church and with God in and through His Church, that gives value to community prayer. It is difficult to keep a proper balance of appreciation between the respective values of community and solitary prayer. As a result of the pressures of modern life, many souls turn aside from a personal search for God. Yet the fate of each soul is decided between God and itself. It is to each individual soul that God puts the decisive questions. Do you believe in me? Do you love me? Actually, there is no opposition between private prayer and community prayer, because both have God as their sole object. Their ways are different, but private prayer expresses itself in a different manner from community prayer. But these ways converge very quickly, and both lead to God. Moreover, it is in solitude that the contemplative discovers their most intimate bond with their brothers and sisters, while community prayer should make each rediscover their personal relationship with God. There is nothing shameful in feeling yourself drawn to solitary prayer, in following our Lord's advice to go into your room and close the door so that you can talk to your Father alone. You must enter the solitude of prayer with the conviction that in finding God, you will find a greater love for your brothers and sisters. You are only going apart from them in order to find them better in God and in themselves. God draws those He loves into solitude until their souls are fully formed. Every man needs solitude to find and develop himself. Otherwise, he will remain a child. He will be afraid of being left alone, face to face with himself. And if the Christian cannot live alone, face to face with his God, then the church is only an immense herd and is no longer the church of Christ. That is why Christ, while he proclaims his teaching in public, always tried to awaken in each individual soul faith in him. And he promised the gift of his love and his presence in the soul as the reward of this acceptance of faith. When you want to pray, go into your room and close the door. There you will find your God, and you will return to your brothers and sisters with your face shining with divine light.